These are some of Britain's greatest landscapes. But this is not all nature's own work, because every tree you see has been carefully placed, every hill and river entirely sculpted by man. It's the result of one man's vision. And what a visionary he was, Lancelot Capability Brown. Brown improved on nature itself, and his artistry can be seen from Yorkshire to Dorset, Cheshire to Suffolk. As we approach the 300th anniversary of his birth, I'm following a momentous rebirth. At Belvoir Castle in Leicestershire, the Duchess of Rutland has uncovered lost plans. Oh my goodness. Drawn up by the master himself. A vision left unfinished in his lifetime that I'm hoping will be finally realised in mine. And so the Duchess has asked me to help her recreate Brown's forgotten masterpiece. The chance of making a Capability Brown plan come to life is irresistible. It's the chance of a lifetime. Here it goes.
Oh, timber!
To work on the scale of a true gardening giant. The size of this. And to understand the man who left us with landscapes we know today.
So beautiful.
As the idyllic vision of England. The challenge before me is huge. I have never planted on this scale before. I'm going to have a difficult job convincing the Duchess to fulfill Brown's plans. And that's in the middle of it.
I know.
And it's horrible. And face up to some hard financial choices. Does she want to be remembered for creating a Brownian parkland or a field of carrots? So what does a Capability Brown landscape feel like? What should the Duchess be trying to emulate? Well, on a day like today, it feels rain-lashed and windswept, but that's the English landscape. Brown was creating his own kind of magic, a wildness, a naturalness, but designed, artful if you like, but looking artless. In the late 18th century, Capability Brown sculpted nearly 270 landscapes, most of them around the grand homes of the aristocracy of Britain. Every one he created was different, responding to the individual character of the place, but he did have trademarks he left behind. Brown planted trees in their thousands and created parkland. So today, these great estates feel as though they were built within a giant woodland glade, peppered with clumps and individual trees. Brown almost always used water. He took streams and developed them into lakes that looked like rivers. And in some places, like Blenheim, Brown went big. This sheet of water, which wouldn't look out of place or scale in the Lake District, reflects all the weathers. It ripples, it almost has waves like an inland sea. Brown quietly structured all this planting and water to provide views, composed pictures in the landscape to surprise us at every turn. It has to be the work of a genius. For the last 3 months, the Duchess's estate has been roaring with the sound of heavy machinery. She's asked me to help her put the vision that Brown drew out on paper onto the landscape of her farmland. We have just 7 months and a budget of less than £200,000 to tackle Brown's planting, his wish for a vast river, and to create his incredible views. But duchesses don't always follow suggestions.
Oh my God, Alan.
Well, it's just all gone. She took out more trees than I intended.
It was disappointing in Bull Hovel when the trees came out.
It was going to be a framed view.
It's almost like having a headmaster arrive. You really want to please him.
We still have a long way to go, the Duchess and I. It's only February, and 6 months of decisions and planning are ahead of us. The Brown plan she recently discovered in her archive is our guide, and it calls for a river-like stretch of water nearly 1.5 miles long. So 3 new 6 million gallon lakes are being made. Bare hillsides have yet to be planted with woodland that in time will enclose the valley in its own glade. And down in the valley itself, agricultural fields will need to be turned into Brown's signature parkland by planting thousands of trees. We've a long way to go before it can be worthy of being called a true Brown landscape. Across England today, we can still visit an amazing 170 landscapes created in Brown's lifetime, but not all are so accessible. I'm visiting a very special one that most of us are unlikely to have seen before. While the Duchess of Rutland gets on with her landscape, I'm continuing my quest to find out more about this man, Brown. I'm travelling to a landscape which is seldom spoken of, very rarely, if ever, filmed. It should help me to fill in the gaps in my picture of Brown. This is Wootton House in Buckinghamshire. Built in 1704 by the high-powered Grenville family. Its owner today is David Gladstone, whose mother-in-law saved the house from demolition in 1957. You not only took on this amazing old house, you took on this secret capability Brown landscape.
Yeah, I'm torn. I don't want too many people to know about it. And
Nobody's watching.
Nobody's watching. There won't be anybody watching this now. On the other hand, it is a landscape that deserves to be known.
A secret capability Brown landscape. Wow, this really is a first for me.
So we leave that open.
Gosh! That's a vista.
That's a vista.
And, amazing. Brown won the Wootton Commission in the 1750s. For nearly a decade, he'd been making his name by transforming the gardens at nearby Stowe. So is that the main lake?
No, that's a small lake. 12.5 acres, but it's small. And what Brown...
There aren't many people who can say that.
No. What you can't see from here, the house, is that is only a small part of the water system.
You see, I can't see anything else from here.
But this is Brown's aim, I think. You come out, you see that. And you have to go all the way around.
So he's drawing you in and teasing you, really.
And this we shall find as we go around. At every step there's a surprise.
Right.
One thing leads to another, and you can't see anything beyond the next one.
I think I need to see this, don't I?
You need to see it before you really understand, yes.
In the 18th century, it became common practice to lay out an ornamental landscape in a circuit to create the illusion of a self-contained world. But Brown also deliberately designed Wootton as a giant watery puzzle to confuse and amuse. Because in Georgian times, aristocratic families loved puzzles and games.
We're just approaching the river here.
For more than 30 years, Wootton's estate manager, Michael Harrison, has single-handedly restored and maintained this parkland. A pavilion?
One of a pair, called the Tuscan seats.
Oh, right. The water seems to go up there. It also seems to go up there.
Yeah, of course, Brown is making your eye lead so it looks like it never ends.
Yeah. Now, there's another surprise now. We've got another stretch of water, but it's not... That's the one we could see from the house, way over there. So this is beyond that. You don't see this from the house.
It is, and a different level. We're now 5 foot higher than that lake. The bridge is masking the change in height.
I thought it might become clearer when I started walking around. It just gets more confusing, or more disorientating, more surprising, I suppose. It's a great pleasure. So what's feeding it?
A ditch.
So all the water that's in there comes through this ditch?
All 50-odd acres of water comes through this ditch.
I am genuinely blown away by Brown's achievement here. He finds a ditch, he decides he's going to make watercourses that look like lakes, that look like rivers. He works out where they're all going to go. Without the aid of a helicopter or anything like that, he's working on the land, and this is civil engineering on the most remarkable scale. I thought this was my journey's end at Wootton, but Brown has something in store I would never have thought possible.
I think you're having me on. I don't think this is lakes. I think this is a river. More water through there. Wow! Look, this is a country. This is... Have you ever seen anything so beautiful? Look! I can't get over the scale. It's massive. I am completely blown away. I can't begin to tell you. It's a bit of an emotional moment, this, you know. This is amazing.
Speechless, afraid.
So beautiful. It's as if you've gone through a wardrobe in Narnia. Each turning gives you something more spectacular. And this is the most astonishing. I'm presuming this is the grand finale.
Yes.
Well, I've never seen anything like it.
Every so often in life, you feel humbled by a great master's skill. Now I feel even more determined to get Capability Brown's vision right at Belvoir Castle. Over the last few months, the Duchess's team have been working on new lakes which are now nearly ready to be filled. But now I want the Duchess to address how to make them appear connected to Belvoir's existing lakes. These were created by the 5th Duchess 200 years ago, but over maybe 100 years of neglect, they've been allowed to silt up and turn into a terrible wild tangle of scrub willow and alder. I'm catching up with the Duchess and Phil, her estate manager, to discuss the problem.
So what's happening down here then?
This is the last bit of the equation, which is the bit in the middle.
Yes.
So we've dug the bit at the top. We're not too bad at the bottom, but then is to get all this wood out. The plan is to clear this alder and self-sown willow.
So is your plan to clear this completely?
Completely. We're actually going to leave this group of alders there.
Not only do these trees have to be cleared, but the bog dug out. Usually, a dam would be created to dry the silt out so heavy machines can get in to dig. And if you're thinking expensive, you'd be right. But this dredging is a problem.
I have this enormous dilemma because I can't afford, sadly, to go on with this project. You know, the coffers are only so big. The last part of the lake, between here and the lakes below, I'm afraid the money's run out.
This is a real bombshell. I need to think on my feet fast to keep Brown's vision for a 1.5 mile stretch of water alive. The Duchess of Rutland has struck a problem creating Capability Brown's vision at Belvoir. Apparently, her budget will not stretch to digging out the overgrown lake.
This is absolutely should be lake.
So if you can't afford to make it lake, what can you do?
I've got you here to help with that.
She has the money to clear the trees. The expense is in digging out the remaining bog to create lake water. But if Brown could create illusions at Wootton, maybe I can create one here.
If I were you, I'd just weigh up
Right.
whether or not by taking all those trees out, you're making a rod for your own back.
Right.
And it would be better off to leave a section of them in where the lake would be.
Okay.
You can play visual tricks, can't you? Because you imagine then that that area of lake is masked by trees.
Yeah.
You don't know that there's no lake.
Yes.
So I think you can just be a bit tricksy about it. So you show as much lake as you've got,
Yes.
but kind of mask the bit in the middle where it isn't.
Dave is Belvoir's woodsman. He's been working for the Duchess and the Duchess before her for over 30 years. He's estimated that there's over 500 tons of scrap timber to clear here, and most of it fell years ago and will have reshooted along its length.
Hi. Good to see you. What a job you got.
It's It's a bit of a muddy place, that's for
It
sure.
is, isn't it? I mean, classic willow and alder country, though.
It is,
It's
yeah.
really muddy. The more moisture there is in here, the more rapidly they're going to grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of them have just fallen over the years.
I mean, this
and-
is our equivalent of jungle, isn't it, really?
It is, yeah.
They grow, they fall over,
That's
they grow
it.
up again.
Well, we're getting in here now, get it all cleared out, get all this standing water away,
And it'll completely
and
change
it'll completely change it, yeah.
the area. It'll come out the top
It'll just
again.
grow,
And the
yeah.
speed of growth on willow is
Well,
greater than anything.
it's
isn't it?
incredible, yeah.
Looking at Dave with his high-vis jacket and his modern chainsaw, it makes me think about how Brown's men were able to do any of this gardening on such a massive scale 250 years ago. Records suggest that Brown would have relied on surprisingly few men to create his vast landscapes, maybe as little as 20 tenants from the estate. If our 21st century Duchess had the option of clearing the bog with cheap labour that didn't need diggers, it might have taken longer, but maybe it would have been affordable.
Now, if they're just going to cut this down and leave the stumps in, it's going to grow again. 6 feet by July. Not look like a lake. We'll see.
In the time of Brown, of course, it would have taken forever to put the landscape in that we've witnessed has gone in. But I'm very grateful that I was born now, when there are diggers. So my greatest line is that Duchess with a digger, because I can't imagine having to wait for men to dig out those lakes, and I'm too impatient. I think for the success of the story here at Belvoir, it is about being the unity of a team. Alan and I are helping to recreate this landscape, but none of it would be possible without Phil.
After estate manager Phil and his team have spent months digging the lakes and lining them with traditional compacted clay, Her Grace has decided that she should be the one to let the water in.
Now we're going to track forward.
Forward, and I press both of those together.
Yeah,
Okay, not very fast.
we can go a little bit faster. You see the knob down
I
there
don't
with the
think I
mat?
want to go any faster. I've never driven a digger before.
The lakes will be fed by a small stream coming down the valley, which until now has been diverted around the excavations.
I think it's important she opens the water out for the very first time.
Now if you drop that arm down so your bucket goes into the bank. Down.
Wow, this is very, very exciting moment. And that one back. Oh, it's wonderful. Wow, look at that.
With one deft move, the smallest and uppermost lake is filling.
Wow, look at that. Woohoo!
And then, thanks to gravity, eventually millions of gallons of water will flow to create the two vast new lakes below.
I must say, I do like that digger.
"48 hours later, and the lakes are filling nicely, and all the dams are holding. So the Duchess has new lakes full of water, but that's not enough yet to make it a brown landscape. The Duchess inherited an estate massively in debt, and she's had to be creative in order to pull the estate finances into the black. Today, the landscape's used to host weddings that bring in thousands of pounds, and days out shooting are sold to clients from all over the world.
It was so scary. There was no sort of book to read. There was nothing. There's no guidance. No one's going to say to me, but she was lovely to everyone and all those staff, but the sailboard went up.
Ever creative, the Duchess wants her new lakes to bring in revenue from fishing, and for that, they're going to need some fish.
Anthony, what have we got in here?
Right, there's 300 rainbow trout in here. We're going to split them between the two parts of the new lake.
Let's just have a look. Oh!
So they're all between £1.5 and £4 these fish.
Oh my word, look at those. They're beauties.
Stocking the lakes means the Duchess will be able to offer exclusive trout fishing breaks.
They're really healthy, they're nice and clean, the colours are really sharp.
Absolutely beautiful. Oh, look at that! First fish going in.
They're too big for you. You'll not eat one of those.
Fishing from the middle of a beautiful brown landscape. Now that sounds very tempting. But one of Phil's trout has gone overboard.
Just hold that up a minute, boy.
Yeah.
No, just you put that to the fish in.
I can't.
Pick it up.
Let me order it, order it.
Order it, you great.
I can't, honestly. I couldn't.
Come here.
Oh my God, bar soap.
It's easy when you know how, Mr. Bird.
It is progress on our project, but highlights just how every part of an estate has to earn its keep, even her new lakes. Many of our English estates have been lost in the last century. Some sold off to become hotel complexes or turned into golf courses. But one particular has survived by rather cunning methods, giving wild animals the run of parkland. This is Longleat Safari Park in Wiltshire. The house is Elizabethan, built by Sir John Thynne in 1568. In 1949, it was the first stately home to open its doors to the public. And then, in 1966, animals arrived. Longleat became the first drive-through safari park outside Africa. Today, the running of Longleat House has been taken over by Lord and Lady Weymouth. And Lady Weymouth has invited me to do something rather unusual.
You're very vocal. There you go. I love the way they clap their flippers.
They're sweet, aren't they?
There you are. Look at that. This is quite surreal, isn't it? Here I am floating around in a capability brown English landscape with sea lions.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure that Brown ever imagined sea lions hippos in his lake.
Lady Weymouth tells me that they've been uncovering the traces of Brown's time at Longleat that have been left in the archives.
This is Dr. Kate Harris, our
Great,
archivist.
lovely to see you. So you have the treasures.
I do have the treasures.
Now this is what was here before Brown came.
Exactly. It's the garden created for the first Viscount Weymouth.
These images show the intricate formal French-style gardens that Brown saw on his first visit here.
You see, you look at the amount of labour it would have taken, this is pre-Brown, to keep that up. Because it's intense.
In 1757, Brown drew up a contract that proposed ripping it all out and replacing it with his English parkland.
This is the document that Brown would have sent to the first Lord Weymouth and said, this is what I plan to do, this is what it's going to cost you. Do you agree?
In instalments over 4 years, the Marquis paid Brown £4,500, the equivalent of £460,000 today. And for that, Brown's labourers worked to create his characteristic, deceptively simple, naturalistic look.
Having been a gardener all my working life, I can just imagine what it must have been like working on that formal garden. And this man from Northumberland comes in and says, no, we're going to strip it all away, mate. It's all going. All these things you've laboured on with your clippers and your hoes and your spades, this intricate pattern, I'm afraid it's all going to go. We're onto a new style now, this wonderful, more natural landscape. The gardeners themselves must have been a bit miffed.
Brown created a new fashion. As he reached his mid-40s, he was given contracts like this all over the country. The aristocracy wanted to be seen as having taste, and having Brown's new landscape through your windows said you were modern and contemporary and celebrated Englishness. The fourth Duke of Rutland at Belvoir Castle cottoned on a little late to this craze. He didn't request a plan from Brown until 22 years after Longleat's, but he had been collecting fashionable paintings.
Here, in our archives, we found this rather magical little book that the fourth Duke recorded.
So this is in his own hand. Modern paintings. 2 landscapes, Gainsborough.
160.
It's a snip. Sir Joshua Reynolds,
These are all collected by the Jew.
Stubbs. What did he pay for his stubs? £40. £40 for stubs. Ancient masters to Claude Lorraine's.
And although they're not recorded what they are, we think, most probably these.
So he was collecting top works, wasn't he?
Yes.
Claude Lorraine painted in Italy a good 100 years before Brown's time, but his interpretation of those landscapes became increasingly in vogue in Britain.
It's no flight of fantasy to say he would have brought Brown into the predecessor of this castle, shown him these and said, hey, look at my Claude Lorraine's. Although these were, by then, you know, the previous century, they were terribly fashionable, like Monet's are today. Not inconceivably, he would have said to Brown, can you make this for me out there where I've got this great tableau of tiny little patchwork fields? I want something that looks like that.
Just as we might choose a garden design from a trendy Sunday supplement, Brown delivered views that were fashionable, and so, bravely, I want the Duchess to have a go at making one the fourth Duke would have loved, in a corner of the estate that looks back at the castle.
The cottage is framed by trees. The focal point, slap bang, is the castle. This, to me, from looking at those paintings by Claude Lorraine, this can be pure him. Take away the log pile, trim one or two of those lower branches off the tree on the left, leave the top branches to frame the view, and very little tree felling, apart from that one in the middle, which I think that's got to go. And when that tree is down, you will then see the castle floating on that sea of trees beyond.
This job is really about manicuring the landscape. We still have much bigger problems ahead of us. The Duchess of Rutland's estate at Belvoir Castle has work happening everywhere. Some of it has been going well.
Wow, look at that!
And some of it is proving a bit more difficult.
I can't afford, sadly, to go on with this project.
But there is still the vital issue of creating Brown's parkland from the Duchess's farmland. This vast field is in the middle of her estate. It's bare, apart from one clump of trees, not at all what Brown intended. Currently, the field's used for sheep, but until recently, it was ploughed for crops. To plan Brown's new parkland, the Duchess has enlisted historian John Phibbs, her forester Richard, and of course her estate manager Phil.
How big is this piece of land?
It's about 60 acres.
I could hardly aim for the wind then, Phil. So 60 acres, how many clumps?
I'm going for about 8.
Oh, 8 clumps. That's
8 clumps and groups. It's not huge.
We've looked at Brown's map. Remind me, what kind of atmosphere should we be creating here?
Brown's plan shows a series of small clumps.
In a way, doesn't that work quite well for you?
Well, I'm not convinced about, you know, Brown was 300 years ago. It's our take on that in the 21st century.
What, would you rather it went back then to arable fields?
Well, I think if you're going to put this back to an arable field and have combinable crops, what you don't want is sort of pieces of woodland all over the place.
You see, in the 11th Duchess of Rutland, does she want to be remembered for creating a Brownian parkland or a field of carrots?
Well, I'm a farmer's daughter from Wales, remember?
We need both. I know we need both.
But yes, I had this debate that goes on.
So this is a crisis of conscience, isn't it? You've got to convince yourself that what you're doing is not just right historically, but right for today and the future of the castle.
It seems the Duchess is having second thoughts. Brown's trees will mean she can never get revenue from crops here.
Do you see how beautiful this is with the snowdrops?
John has an idea to show us the landscape, how Brown would have seen it.
OK, now if we turn round, what happens on this drive is a slow reveal of the landscape. So at this level, we've got the big oaks, and you can see them with the sycamore stuff over there. And now we'll walk steadily forward, and I'll try and show you how it works.
John's going to show us how to read a Capability Brown landscape.
Now I want you to watch as we go down. Do you see the castle is disappearing?
Behind the evergreen
behind
tree.
the evergreen clump.
And you want it to do this? You want the castle to appear and disappear?
I want the castle to disappear completely.
Never noticed that.
So
and
from
I've driven
here-
down this 100,000
And look
times.
how the castle is disappearing.
Yeah.
And we could make that clump a tiny bit bigger to make it disappear.
It's wonderful, this, because the landscape is telling you a story as you go.
Well,
We don't think about this and think, oh, that's a nice view, that's a nice view. But to actually see the transition of it, that was wonderful.
What I want to see is more trees
To break the line.
to break the line, but also it will help conceal the castle. I get excited about this.
No, I do too, and I think when you're woken up to it. So the ground is now flat.
But now it's flat, and now you feel I've arrived. Just by that change in the incline, and blow me down, the castle is appearing.
It's just another great example of Brown's detailed thinking about his views.
You're a magician.
No, Brown was the magician.
So what did the magician intend here?
Over here, Duchess, one clump.
Okay,
for me.
off we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alan,
That
stop.
way.
Put one in. That's right. Just so I'm getting the flavour. That's
Yeah.
right.
Where do I go now?
Hang on a sec, Emma.
Do I put one here,
Yes,
John?
please. Yep.
It is surprising when the flags go in, you can actually start to see it.
Yeah,
It's
see
a
the
few
shape,
more in,
yeah.
can't you?
I'm getting muddled. Emma, stop. Alan, carry on.
With our flags in, John can later check that the trees won't be obscuring any views. But perhaps more importantly, it'll help the Duchess with her deliberations.
So you think it has got to be done?
Ah, yes.
I don't think you'll regret it. I mean, you may think to yourself, I'm losing potentially 45 grand a year.
I listen, hopefully, to everyone around me, but at the end of the day, it lands on my
The
shoulders.
buck stops with you.
Yeah. Ah.
I have to remember the conflicting priorities a 21st century Duchess has to juggle. I think I've persuaded her, but will she hold her nerve? It's been a few weeks since I discussed clearing the old lakes with the Duchess and Phil. Dave has been in clearing over 300 trees. The timber is worthless, and what can't go into the castle boiler is burnt in the field. It might look a mess, but you can now see right across the valley.
Now you've got a whacking great piece of landscape opened up there now.
At this side you can see is the River Devon,
Yeah.
which has now got a proper water source running through into the lake. And then the far side is the overflow for the top lakes.
It's very exciting because you can see it happening quite quickly.
It was all overgrown. There's no vistas, no views, there's nothing. The problems we had with people looking, thinking we're destroying.
Yes.
But it's actually now they're coming back and looking and say, my gosh, I think I can see what you're trying to do.
Beaver doesn't have a newly dredged lake. Instead, it has a huge expanse of waste wood. But at least it's not standing, and you can see over it. Time will tell if my idea of felling only some of it will work. On a project of this scale, it's a question of taking it one job at a time.
Brown, in all his landscapes, sort of ringed them with trees, not formally, but in great sweeps, so the trees frayed into the meadowland. This is what is going to happen here. What kind of shape? Well, they seem to have decided already.
John Phibbs has used his expertise in interpreting Brown plans all over England to mark out how he thinks Brown would have planted up this bare hillside. His design doesn't just run the trees along the top, but dips them down towards the lakes as well.
What do you think?
It's weird.
Why?
Well, it's all over the place.
With Brown, he's working with the imagination. He doesn't want you to see everything, because what's round the corner might be even better. So that's why I put this huge lobe in, so that from the castle you can't see right up the valley.
When you look out across that valley, you turn your eyes to the right and you see this grisly flat landscape.
Right.
You just see the skyline, which is grass. It's going to be the most tremendous impact of all the work you do.
The main view of the landscape should, quite properly, be from the terrace of the castle. From 1.5 miles away, John and Phil look like ants on the hillside.
Is that you, John? Are you there?
From here, the woodland, when it's grown, should hide the far edge of the lakes, as if Brown's River is disappearing away into the next county.
So it's only by looking at here and imagining the height of the trees where they're walking that we can tell.
Now you should see us again, and we're now going along the bottom.
Yeah, I can see them.
This extra lot of trees are another 100 yards ahead. I think I want to have some more single trees.
Yeah, tell me, good
Yeah,
idea.
no, Alan says that's a good idea.
Fantastic.
Job well done.
So do you think we've got something then that fulfills all the requirements? Aesthetically, it's beautiful. It looks right from here. We've eyed it up.
Yes.
It's fine in terms of...
Not taking agricultural land,
No.
right?
So it seems as though with any luck we might have cracked that.
Yeah, I think we've done that.
Good morning's work.
In 1751, Brown moved his growing family from Stowe in Buckinghamshire to Hammersmith, the centre of the horticultural world.
It's often said that Brown was the right man in the right place at the right time, but he chose to come here to the banks of the Thames, knowing that this was the centre of activity among the nurseries, among the nurserymen, with transport to and fro to all his commissions.
Brown, now 35, was to base himself here for the next 13 years.
Letters to Brown at the time were addressed to him at The Mall, Hammersmith. There was presumably a large terrace here of rather grand houses, one of which Brown would have rented and his family would have been installed, but of course he'd always have been off on his travels.
Brown was running as many as 30 contracts the breadth of England, and getting round in the 18th century was a bit different to today.
We can track Brown's increasing success by the ways in which he travels.
Historian Oliver Cox is giving me a taste of Brownian transport.
Early on, you get on your horseback, you can only really take 2 saddlebags with you on either side of the horse, and then you set off.
Well then, as he's getting on in the world, he doesn't want to be sitting on a saddle all day, you know. So he could be travelling in something like this, perhaps closed in the weather.
Yeah, and he writes when he's coming back from one of his commissions, he said, "We raced along as fast as 4 horses could take us." So that gives you a sense of how well Brown's doing now. He's no longer just on one horseback. He's got 4 horses pulling him as quickly as he possibly can go.
But no maps either, no road maps. How did they know where they were going?
What there are these strip maps. They're the roads that link together big cities.
These pictorial guides, the sat-nav of their time, were brand new inventions during Brown's travelling years.
There are no road numbers on here, they're all named, so it's the Leatherhead Road, the Guildford Road.
You're taking the Great North Road if you're going up north, you're not taking the A1.
You're looking for landmarks. It's pilotage, really, isn't it? There's a spire. Yes, we're on the right road, keep going.
Yeah, so people start to navigate by, you'll see there are some church spires on there. Also, big houses are a great way of navigating. So the houses that Brown's working with start to appear on these strip maps because they're areas of interest.
It's several weeks since I was last at Belvoir, and in that time, something's happened. The air's warmer, the sun's higher in the sky, and the birds are singing. Winter is turning into spring.
Time's running out. Young trees need to be planted before spring takes hold. On the bare hillside across the valley from the castle, the landscape is changing fast. Thousands of trees in plastic guards are planted.
There's about 8 acres of planting going in, which of course wasn't in my budget. And as we know, I'm always looking at how to make the bottom line balance, and forestry seems an incredibly expensive luxury.
The Duchess's foresters are planting £20,000 worth of trees.
When we're done, there'll be over 10,000 trees just in this plot. You you should see the list of different species of trees I've got to get in. It's a whole 2-page, like, you know, double-sided A4, whereas usually it's like 6 or 7 species. This one I've got the whole lot.
Brown believed in using a mixture of native and exotic species.
I must say I'm most intrigued in 30 years or so time to see what this plantation looks like in comparison to all the other ones, because it's different.
There's no doubt about it. Trying to pull off Brown's plans is a bold, even a shrewd commercial move by the Duchess. But it doesn't surprise me that she's still having an internal struggle about all the planting.
I'm beginning to think that we may have to rein back on some of the planting. It's all very well me standing there and saying, wood there, plantation there. It costs money and time. I'm going to have to go round and just have a quiet look and then see what the costs are. It'll most probably be a combination of what I'd really ideally like in a perfect world and what we can honestly do.
But not all the Duchess's forestry needs to be undertaken on such a commercial scale.
So now, Rich,
I left her with the artistic challenge to simply manicure a few trees to form a viewpoint that Claude Lorraine would be proud of.
let's get on with it, shall we? What we want to do is get this vista, don't we?
That's right.
Open for the first Brown view.
But has she learnt from her earlier mistakes? At least she's got Richard her forester on hand.
If you were an artist, I suppose, setting up your easel, you'd want to see the view framed with the tree. So it's this branch hanging here and the next one hanging down there. The idea that we spoke about to get it so you get that huge impact was to take this one out, correct?
Horse chestnut, correct.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Over it goes.
Oh, wow.
There we are.
Oh, goodness.
It did go the right way.
The Duchess's pruning work will need a little time to soften, and I can't wait for July, when I'm going to get the chance to see whether she's achieved a picture-perfect view. I know the Duchess would be the first to admit she's on a massive learning curve, but the stakes are very high. Only time will tell whether Beaver's new brown landscape is good enough to stand comparison with his other fine masterpieces.
From over here, let me tell you, that's 8 acres of planting.
From a viewpoint near the castle, the new plantation is quite hard to see. But having been away for a few weeks, I'm really keen to take a closer look.
Oh, this is exciting.
Yeah, we're getting there.
This was that bare hillside that we looked at from the castle. You've been going some to get that done since I left.
It's been a push.
How do you feel when you look at this now?
I'm proud.
For me, it feels such a privilege to have helped, nudged and cajoled the Duchess with the resolve to reinstate this part of Brown's design.
But it's only when you get here that you you realise what I've committed to you in terms of scale.
Before, this was a bare hillside. Now it's a sea of new life that can only improve over time.
That is the tree. It's only a foot high. Couple of years, this will be coming out the top. And a lot of these little trees that you've got in the tree shelters will overtake the bigger ones you've put in. And I know that for a fact because I've done it. You've got a mixture of things here. You've got hawthorn, you've got field maple, you've got Guelder rose, that lovely viburnum, wild privet, wayfaring tree, dogwood, Cotoneastus quince, crabapple, oak beech lime, wild cherry, hornbeam. Here we've got ash. You can see, you can always tell ash, easy one to tell because it's got black buds. Yeah, that's it. Oh, Amelanchier, I think snowy mespilus. Lovely tree. It's sort of purplish when it starts to come out. When it's a bit older, it'll flower.
The Duchess has been very brave, but in just 20 years, this will look like a wood.
What's become evident for this is that the scale when you're on the ground,
Yes.
as opposed to from looking from the castle, is so much bigger.
I know.
You were really generous, I think, to gulp and say we're going to go ahead with this, because by being generous in terms of size and scale, you've made it work.
It's amazing to look out over this sea of new trees. But gazing across the landscape, I can see everything isn't perfect.
Nipton pasture, which is this great agricultural looking field we marked out some areas in there for trees.
So if you remember, when we had John with us, we looked at how to make that rather like, really, that wonderful
further
landscape.
over. That there's lovely with the dotted trees and the clumps. Then we move over to there and it suddenly disappears.
Yes.
Why have you stopped?
Brown's plan that we've got in the castle, it shows very definite groups of planting.
It's parkland, yeah. You're fudging me here, Duchess, because we marked out these clumps of trees.
We did.
Where we said this
and
is
it's
where we
all on
want.
a plan.
It is.
And just like the plan of 300 years ago.
Brown grows old and nothing has happened.
Yes, but it has happened, Alan. You're standing amongst the happening.
Are we talking finance there?
Yes, we're talking finance.
We are.
That's the truth.
You've got this, it's beautiful. It's astonishing, you're aware.
I know.
And that's in the middle of it.
I know.
And it's horrible.
Somehow, Beaver's farmland has to become parkland. It looks as if my real challenge will be to convince a 21st century Duchess that Brown's 18th century vision for parkland at Beaver is right. We still have a lot to do.
I have never planted on this scale before.
Next time, the clock is ticking towards the unveiling of a new landscape.
I'm feeling a bit anxious about everything.
Everyone's on tender hooks up here.
And I discover something about my own family.
Could one of my great-great-great-grandfathers actually have worked for him?